And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for stopping by. We've got a bit of a fun one for you today, or at least one that's rooted in more pleasant of an origin story than most of the things that we ever get to grips with in terms of referential case studies and whatnot. The TV show, The Traitors, of all things, has fast become a phenomenon. On television, everywhere you move, on social media, it tends to be the one thing that seems to really gather everyone's focus. It is the new Desperate Housewives, if you will. So it's looking at we're really looking at the finale through the lens of psychology and behavioral science and the roots of our educational background. So from really the mental toll of deception to the collapse of trust and the power of group influence, I really think that's what makes this show compelling, in that it teaches us lessons through observation about human behavior under pressure in games, in workplace, and in life itself. You know, the Traitors finale very much is a psychological experiment wrapped in a medieval cloak, you know. So the question that's on the table for us to look at is why do some people crumble under deceit while others seem to thrive on it? And really, what does that reveal about all of us when trust becomes a currency? What are your thoughts, Bob? Have you watched any of the episodes in full? I admit I haven't watched any full episodes. I've only caught a lot of the best bits and the social media videos. What's your opinion on it?
Well, from my opinion, is that the guy who originated this, a guy called Mark Posts in the Netherlands. I don't know anything about him, but I would imagine that he has something to do with psychology, because it is a perfect blend of psychology and social science. It's about being in groups, it's about being out of groups. But the masterstroke that they've pulled with this season of it is they've made it a celebrity edition, which actually shortens the process a little bit, because these people will all at least know of each other. Whereas in the civilian version, obviously they all come into it blind, so you have to
Mm.
go through the storming Norman part. But in this, people are already attaching themselves. And during the series, they talked about the big dogs,
Yeah.
and how they thought that the people who put the show together, they were thinking like celebrities, put it that way. Who would,
Mm.
who here is a big dog, and they wouldn't have them both as traitors. They'd have one as a traitor and one as a faithful. Now, for people who don't know the show, it's 19 people in this instance come together in a castle, and they're in the castle and it surrounds for those whole 6 days. So although we get edited version, and there's always that caveat that what we see is not entirely what has happened the whole time, because otherwise it'd have to be
Yeah.
24-hour TV. But three of them are picked as traitors, and they do not they keep that a secret to themselves. And the aim of the game is for one of them to, at the end, win the prize, and they
Mm.
build up the prize through doing activities throughout the show. And I think in this it was about £90,000, which was going to go to charity. So
Wonderful.
the stakes were different, because in the civilian versions they keep it. But
Mm.
if a traitor gets to the end and gets the money, he gets it no matter if there's a faithful alongside him, he will get the money.
Oh, okay.
So that's the format, and so we see a lot of game playing going on.
Yeah.
Every day, the traitors are allowed to kill a faithful, and every day the faithfuls have a round table where they all get together and try to identify and expel a traitor.
Mm.
Now, it's fair to say in this edition they were useless at doing that. They were not. They were working from a completely different perspective, and maybe that was a bit of the necessity to win taken out of it, because they weren't going to get the money
Mm.
themselves. So they were in there for different reasons. Some of them were obviously in there for the exposure because they weren't so well known.
Mm.
But when you're together for 6 days, I don't know about you, Ben, but I don't think you could keep up that type of facade for too long. You'd have to show your true self at some time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of that to be looked at when it comes to the nature of cognitive load, right?
Mm,
Whether you're looking at the work of your working memory being overloaded, performance, and
mm,
self control, it's going to
yeah.
deteriorate over time,
Mm,
and
mm,
lying on top of that increases the intrinsic load because the liar's got to invent and suppress truth and monitor
yeah.
all of the reactions simultaneously.
Mm,
There's a thing that popped up, and I've got it in my notes. Is emotion cognition interaction. So
yeah.
the hormone cortisol, it rises under sustained deception, and that impairs short term memory and your emotional
Yeah.
regulation through that as well. And that seems to be what struck a chord in the celebrity versions,
Yeah.
because you have people whose very career thrives on sustaining the cognitive demands of being on television, right?
Yes.
Whereas the average Joe doesn't. It's different degrees of cognitive load and different thoughts, and I'm going to get £90,000, whereas a celebrity's thinking I'm going to give £90,000 to charity. These are different degrees of pressure that go on in that way. And I come from a performance background. My first degree was in drama and theatre arts, and even when I was jobbing around as a stuntman back in the day, which granted the role of a stuntman, then they're never very big, but
Mm,
you still have to put a lot of focus into being something that you're not, and that takes a lot
mm,
out of you. So to sustain that over days is is not a task I envy anyone. But on a behaviorally scientific route, it kind of makes you think that, well, if you go into there with this behavioral science and the social science knowledge, asking the right questions or
uh,
making the right comments are going to exacerbate those kinds of things to make the tells a little
mm,
larger, or a
mm.
peek behind the mask even more. Reminds me of
Yeah.
the, like, did you ever watch the show Would I Lie to You?
Yes.
I love that show, and I
Mm,
use it for practice, in following along the specific minutiae of people who are on the telly. But I always wanted to see a Would I Lie to You for people who aren't celebrities, for people who aren't on the telly, for people who aren't actors or comedians or used to making up things on the spot. And as a result, Bob Mortimer became a bit of a legend on that show for his stories that were either so farcical they must be true, or so farcical that it was nonsense just
yeah.
coming out of Bob Mortimer's mouth. And that's what I think the traitors struck upon. The gamifying of
Yeah.
deception, because it's usually thought of so poorly in social settings. You know.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of interesting points out of just what you've just said. The first is this actually proves the theory that we're not good at detecting deception.
Oh yeah.
Because if I was to say to you, and you haven't seen it, and if people are watching this who haven't seen it, this is a spoiler alert. But the person who won it, Alan Carr, he actually, there was one point in it when because it gets harder to hide when you get down to low numbers.
Mm.
And so I think there was probably about 8 or 9 of them left. And they actually went round the group and says, "Are you a faithful?" to all of them. And they all answered. And when Alan Carr answered, he actually burst out laughing because he was a traitor.
Eh,
But no one, no, but he got away with it. And when you're watching it, there was a few occasions when you could pick up, but then you
yeah.
know in advance who they
Yeah.
are, but you could pick up on things that he wasn't very good at what he did, but because
Mm.
it fitted with his persona so well,
Mm.
and I suppose because they're all in this enclosed environment together all the time, we can easily spot them because we know. I don't know whether it'd be so easy in that environment when you're with them 24 hours, well, unless they're sleeping, you're with them all the time.
Yeah.
And, from breakfast time till midnight, they're together
Yeah.
as groups, and you see the groups forming. And funnily enough, two of the final, it got down to five, and that was two traitors and three faithful.
Mm.
And then they one guy, a rugby player called Joe,
Mm.
identified them. He knew who they were, but only one person can win this, and so now he's torn. And so what he decided to do is to get alongside them, and he made a pact with them that they would vote another person out, and then he turned on them.
Interesting.
But basically what happened with that is the person who was his ally then began
Mm.
to question him
Mm.
and thought, well, we're all playing a game here. And then he started to overthink it, ended up voting the guy out, leaving Alan Carr, and just two of them left. So it worked against him. And so you can overthink. And I
Absolutely.
think in those pressured situations when cognitive overload and
Yeah.
you're getting, and then it comes down to who in that moment can say that one thing that may just change you completely
Yeah. It's
against everything that you was going to do. And that's what happened in the end of that. It's astounding. People, I was in a room with a few people, and they were all going, no, and shouting at the TV because he was doing everything against what he had said. A guy called Nick Mohammed, who probably should have won it, he was
yeah.
going against everything he'd been saying and thinking to the camera. He just went totally opposite to it. And rational thought went out the window.
This is again why, and before I say what I'm about to say, cards on the table. I am kind of biased with this, with what I'm
Mm,
about to say, because it's the areas that I work in, it's the areas that I teach in.
yeah,
But I have yet to be in a situation where either a knowledge of game theory or simply having a trained memory wouldn't
yeah,
be valuable. And I realize that the traitors is kind of a blue moon situation, but if you take the TV show aspect out of it and put it back into like
yeah,
a put it in an environment where you're with the same group of people in a confined space, like some low economy insurance cubicle kind of quintessential stereotypical kind of area, and that knowledge of whether somebody's running a prison dilemma game or a zero sum game or a non-zero sum game, or they didn't say this yesterday when talking about the same thing, why are they saying this now? It's not following any kind of, oh, they are twitchy or this or whatever it is. It's just simply saying, well, that didn't follow the pattern that you'd set up previously when the same
yeah,
stakes were on the table. Why is it differently? And a lot of what I found within game theory and the trained memory aspect of it is you're not utilizing an opinion. You're not trying to come to some kind of, oh well, this means this kind of an approach. You're just following the displayed pattern. It likely points towards this type. I mean, in game theory, they're referred to as games, but within game theory, a game is basically any situation that requires a decision be made. That's
yeah,
that's that's their referential terms for it, and it it always comes back to a lightening of cognitive load, which having a trained memory does. If you try and remember something that you know you've seen but you can't quite pull back to, you're increasing your own cognitive load through the effort of trying to get it there. One of the things that I've seen the clip that you mentioned with Alan Carr laughing, and the well, it's known as a mirror stain, and it
mm,
is so faithful's experience a mirror stain. Excuse me, not mirror stain. That would be something else altogether. Um, perpetual lie detection triggers the hypervigilant state. So it's like threat monitoring. So
Yeah,
from a neuroscientific perspective, your amygdala is constantly on. So
yeah,
it makes people jumpy and
yeah,
prone, and that is not a body language cue or a non-verbal detection kind of cue. That is simply following, like we were saying before in our last episode about resilience. That's simply following what the brain does in response to the perception of a threat and following the pattern forward. That's it.
yeah.
And if you make a mental note of, well, this person's very on edge, this person's very on edge, this person's very on edge, it
Mm.
provides groupings. It doesn't necessarily mean faithful or traitor, but it provides groupings in that situation
Yes.
for you to understand the patterns that are at play in that way. It seems to me very much like the Traitors has become the modern day Big Brother.
Yes, yes, yes. In a lot of ways,
Yeah,
but I think the psychological base for it and the behavioural base for it is stronger here,
yeah.
um, and it may well descend towards what the pantomime that Big Brother became.
Mm,
And I think that the American version is a bit more like that. If you want to see contestants who are celebrities just acting to the max, then watch the American version. But if you want to see people who are in the very first iteration of that sort of thing
yeah.
before it becomes that, then the
Mm,
UK one is probably the one to watch. It's interesting because it shows how humans behave under intense pressure. Now, that sounds odd, but like I say, it was filmed over 6 days, and they were together all those time. And it must, even though, no matter what your agenda and what your motives are for being there, it must have a psychological effect on you. And we don't get to see all of it. And I'm
yeah.
sure that there's dynamics going on, and the producers of it are very clever. So they go to tasks and they go in Land Rovers, and it's interesting. And I picked up on it, but maybe others wouldn't. Is how they group the people in these Land Rovers, who they put together.
Interesting.
And they did it because that's an occasion when they can have a talk out of the ears of others, and it was very interesting. The whole thing was very interesting. I mean, it's entertainment, but really,
Yeah,
it's just a microcosm of how we would behave under extreme pressure. And
yeah.
when we're under extreme pressure, I mean, we could ask the people who are going to listen to this, if you were a faithful in those sort of circumstances, what would you trust? Would you trust your instincts, or would you actually be more cognitive and follow evidence?
Yeah.
That's a good question, and I don't know what I would do in those circumstances.
No, nor do I. Nor do I. And I've it's a question that I get asked to me as well. Like, what would you do in this situation? And you approach it through, well, I would likely do this, but you've got the benefit of rational distance in the question itself as well. You can
Yeah,
hypothesize, but you would never truly know what you would do until you're in the situation. And this is one of the things that I found from working with the guys in law enforcement with situational awareness training is
yeah,
that the body won't go to anywhere the mind hasn't already been. So
mm,
at the very least, evaluating those kinds of questions, or following your own personal rationale, whatever that is, as strictly as you can, that when and if said situation arises, you're more likely to go to that situation you've prepared for because it has a reflexive
sure,
aroma of comfort, you know.
sure.
And like with the traveling in the cars, that's a prison dilemma game. Just with
Yeah,
three people that's on the table. You can play cars off against one another. I wonder what the other car's thinking. Wonder what the other car's talking about. Who's talking
yeah,
about what? Or if any of the players of the game are thinking, why are those three together? But there's it's game theory has such a quality application. And I'm not a salesman for game. to anyone that's listening. I'm just a big fan. I'm just a big fan.
Yeah,
It's a valuable prospect to it. But building off that as well, in terms of some of the things that we can recognise from the show, is social identity theory. In that
yeah,
people favour in-group members who share similar traits, and
exactly.
that can very often lead to misplaced loyalty. And then you've got a groupthink bias, with your cohesive groups, the suppression of dissent in order to try and just keep the peace or maintain the harmony. It's really a reduction in critical thinking, but that's seen in unanimous vote spirals. There's confirmation biases. There's as a result there will be oxytocin imbalances, which will very often affect trust in that situation. The finale alliances are less about evidence objectively when you're watching it.
Yeah,
It's less about evidence from the individuals playing and more about salience, emotional resonance. Somebody who feels safe or familiar or validating. The alpha voice, if you will.
yes,
Driving the consensus of whatever it is. And I would have thought Nick Mohammed um, would have had the upper hand here, being an actor, a comedian, but also a
yeah,
magician. He's a magician as well, and one of the things that you can reduce down to its core for magical play is they are entertaining liars.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's the one that people are saying, well, they can't understand because he kept the game. He could have kept the game going, and they
yeah,
probably, well, there was a chance that they could have had a different outcome, but he chose to end the game with the two others, and so that's why Alan Carr won because he was still there. He didn't think it through. You're better to have two of you there than than three of you there. But the thing about this is the way the show is structured is so unbelievably good in
mm,
terms of building up psychological pressure. So, for instance, the last activity they did, the five of them,
mm,
was they had to unlock the most amount of money that they won in any single game on the whole show, £20,000 in four boxes on a train. And it was in the last carriage, and they got down to the last 2 minutes or whatever it was. And there was explosives in there. And when they got off the train, the actual carriage exploded. And so that is all done for a reason. It isn't just
yeah,
because it's good television. That draws people together, that bonds people. And and maybe in those moments, the alliances they'd formed start to be called into question
yeah,
because they're all in it together. So again, they're five people, not three and two.
mm,
They're five people, and I think Nick Mohammed is the person that if anyone was to do a study of this program, it would be to study him all the way through it and to actually talk to him, and maybe he
mm.
will do an interview because he had it and he let it go
Nick,
because of overthinking, I think,
yeah,
and because for some bizarre reason, which I can't at this moment fathom, I'm going to have to rewatch it. He turned against the person that he all the way through says we're definitely two faithfuls, and then something or someone must have put the doubt in his mind that maybe that's the ploy all the way through to be to cozy up to you. And I think because Joe definitely did it with these two who were traders,
yeah.
then it just conflicted him. And in that confliction, he went the wrong way. Twice he went the wrong way.
Nick, what you doing? What you doing? But
Oh,
this is
well, yeah.
this. Go on.
Well, a couple of things that I would impress on anyone who watches this, whether they're in the UK or without it, without beyond the UK,
Mm,
is to watch this program.
mm,
And if you want to get a really deep analysis of it in a more fun way, then Richard Osmond and a lady whose name escapes me do a podcast called The Rest is Entertainment.
mm.
And they have done specials on each episode, and they are really worth listening to because they're 45 minutes long and they go into great detail. And Richard Osman was one of the people I think who brought Big Brother to to the UK, if I'm not mistaken. He
See,
certainly did
okay.
other game shows.
I didn't know that. I knew him mostly as the giant from Pointless, and he's
Yeah.
written
No,
some
no,
very good novels.
he was a TV producer before that. And I
Okay,
definitely, he definitely bought, what's the one with the boxes? Deal or
deal
No
or no
Deal. He
deal?
definitely did that.
No way. There you go. You learn something new every day. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, those points that you were making mentioning in terms of overthought, there's a couple of things that stand out as biases and bias adjacent ways of thinking. Um, there's one that I would need fact checking on the name, but I'm pretty sure it's called the Othello error.
Yeah.
It's mistaking fear of being disbelieved for signs of deceit or anxiety
Yes.
or guilt or something like that.
Yes.
Um, but the halo effect is kind of the inversion of it. So if you are seen as more attractive or more confident or more fun or all of the above or something, some kind of positive notion around that, you're perceived invariably as more honest or more
Yeah.
competent, likable,
Mm.
these types of things, and then that very well connects to the fundamental attribution error. So where
Yes.
you over attribute behavior to personality rather than situation. So
Yes.
someone might label a nervous player suspicious instead of terrified. There was a scene that I saw, and it's cards on the table. It's mostly because I have a juvenile sense of humour, but there was an actress again whose names escape me. She's been on British TV and film for years. Very prim and proper lady, and
Oh, yes. Yes. I
the,
can't think of her name as well.
yeah, but they're in this dark room talking about the task that they have to go to. It all goes quiet, and she farts,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
it was just this incredible tension breaker that in those situations you can misattribute the reaction to stress. And I saw
Yeah.
people, I genuinely saw people talking about it in the comment section of, oh, well, she must have been scared, but talking about it seriously. And then people talking about, like, oh, well, she was just relaxing because she was whole. I'm thinking, you're putting two and two together and
Yeah.
making the rainbow, something like this that just doesn't connect in that kind of situation because of these biases that are on the
Yeah.
table. Oh, she looks so fun, or oh, she chose to do that. No, I can only speak for myself, but my gas cannot be controlled to
Yeah.
to call into that kind of drama. But all that is to say, I'm just using hopefully a comedic observation to try and highlight the lack of critical thought that happens when your cognitive load is increased, and how
Yeah.
much that pressure can highlight or harm your ability to think with clarity in a
Yeah.
situation. You know,
I,
that's just one.
I totally agree, and I can't think of her name. She is a well-known. She was in the
Yeah,
Marigold Hotel one, wasn't she? In
she
that.
is.
But what if you do watch it? Watch her because she gets everything wrong. She never gets anywhere near identifying anyone. But when she talks about them, she says she gets it totally wrong. What's going on? She's saying, "Oh, but they're really nice people. They are. Everyone in there were really nice people. It's just that
Yeah.
three of them were had been picked to not be for that act, for that game that you're playing. I think she lost the idea of why she was there. I think she just thought it was a 6 day health retreat or something.
Oh, God bless.
But it was funny. It was funny. But the other thing that has come to my mind about it is it completely destroys, if you want to look at it from that point of view, these people who go online and look at videos of things and make assessments of them, because it's all well and good doing that from a distance, because we can do that watching the traitors and we can be right because we
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
because these are events that's happened in the past and we know, when we know the context and everything about it. It's different when you're in there.
Yeah.
And it's so much harder when you're with these people, and these people are all being nice. It's just some of them are being friendly with an ulterior motive. And how do you spot that? But one thing I would say about that woman we were just talking about,
Yeah.
if I was a cyber security expert, I'd be onto her straight away, because she's the sort of person that they would love to get hold of, and
Yeah.
she's advertising it over national TV.
God bless her. Same password for everything, and also.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be her. That'll be her, definitely.
I love it, love it. Well, guys, if you've gotten anything out of today, we'd love to hear from you. Right? I mean, let us know what would you do? Do you think you'd make a successful traitor, or would you be better suited to being a faithful? Not that you get the opportunity to choose, but in our made up world, we'll gift you that choice. It's just more of a reflection of human behaviour. And you can also choose to be faithful towards this podcast by clicking on the subscribe button and the bell so that you are notified when every new episode drops. But until that time, we're going to love you and leave you, and we'll see you next week for another one. All right, guys, take it easy.